Chapter 7, Original Edition, CD 4. Being the part of your mind which does not believe it is responsible for itself, and being without allegiance to God, your ego is incapable of trust. And projecting its insane belief that you have been treacherous to your Creator, your ego believes that others, who are as incapable of this as you are out to take God from you. And whenever a brother attacks another, this is what he believes, that another brother is out to take God from them. Whenever you attack, this is what you believe, that others are out to take God from you, that they are being treacherous to you, as you believe in your insanity that you have been treacherous to God. Projection always sees your will in others. And so if you will to separate yourself from God, that is what you will think others are doing to you. You are the will of God. Do not accept anything else as your will, or you are denying what you are. Deny what you are, and you will attack, believing that you have been attacked. But see the love of God in you, and you will see the love of God everywhere, because the love of God is everywhere. See God's abundance in everyone. And if you will see God's abundance in everyone, you will know that you are in God with them. They are part of you, as you are part of God. And you are as lonely without understanding this, as God Himself is lonely when His children don't know Him. The peace of God is understanding this. There is only one way out of the world's thinking, just as there was only one way into the world's thinking. That is, understand totally by understanding totality. Understand totally by understanding totality. Understand totally by understanding totality. Perceive any part of your ego's thought system as completely insane, completely delusional, and wholly undesirable, and you have correctly evaluated all of the ego's thought system. And this correct evaluation of your ego's thought system enables you to perceive any part of creation as wholly real, which means wholly perfect, which means wholly desirable. And wanting this only, you will have this only. And giving this only, you will be only this. The gifts you offer to your ego are always experienced as sacrifices. But the gifts you offer to God's world are gifts to you. The gifts that you offer to God's world, to the universe of love, the gifts you offer to the universe of love are gifts to you. And the gifts you offer to the universe of love will always be treasured by God, because they belong to God's beloved children who belong to Him. All power and glory are yours, because reality is God's. All power are yours, because reality is God's. the defense of conflict. We said that without projection, there can be no anger. But it's also true that without projection, there can be no love. Projection is a fundamental law of the mind, and therefore a law which always operates. That's what it means to say it is a fundamental. Projection is a fundamental law of the mind, and therefore a fundamental law is a law that always operates. The law of projection is the law which unifies the universe of love and keeps the universe of love in the mind of love. To the ego, the law of projection is perceived as a way of getting rid of something you don't want. To your ego, projection is seen as a way of giving away something you don't want. To Holy Spirit, projection is the fundamental law of sharing by which you give what you value in order to keep it in your own mind. Projection to the Holy Spirit is the law of extension. To the ego, projection is the law of deprivation. The ego therefore produces, and so this law of projection, which the mind must do, this law of projection, therefore produces abundance or scarcity, depending on how you choose to apply projection. The choice of how you use projection is up to you. But it's not up to you to decide whether or not you will utilize projection. Every mind must project, because that is how every mind lives, and every mind is life. The ego's use of projection must be fully understood before its inevitable association between projection and anger can finally be undone. The ego always tries to preserve conflict. And the ego, your ego, my ego, is very ingenious in devising ways which seem to diminish conflict. And the ego is ingenious in devising ways which seem to diminish conflict, because the ego doesn't want you to find conflict so intolerable that you will insist on giving up conflict. Therefore, since the ego doesn't want you to give up conflict, it doesn't want you to insist on giving it up, the ego doesn't want you to find conflict so intolerable that you insist on giving it up. So, the ego tries to persuade you that it can free you of conflict, lest you give the ego up and free yourself. The ego says, I can help free you from conflict. Don't give me up and free yourself. I'll help you free yourself of conflict. And the ego, using its own warped version of the laws of God, utilizes the power of mind only to project its conflict, only to defeat your mind's real purpose. So your ego uses the power of mind, it uses projection, only to defeat the mind's real purpose. And so, to that end, the ego projects conflict from your mind to others' minds in an attempt to persuade you that you've gotten rid of your problem or your conflict. Well, this has several fallacies which probably are not so apparent. For instance, for starters, strictly speaking, conflict cannot be projected, precisely because conflict cannot be fully shared. And so any attempt to keep part of the conflict and get rid of another part of the conflict doesn't mean anything. Remember that a conflicted teacher is a poor learner. A conflicted teacher is a poor teacher and a poor learner. The poor teacher's lessons are confused, and the lessons of the poor teacher, the transfer value of their lessons is severely limited by their confusion. The transfer value of my lessons are severely limited by my confusion, because I'm a poor teacher and I'm a poor learner. Because I'm trying to project the conflict from my mind. A second fallacy is the idea that you can get rid of something you don't want by giving it away. Giving is how you keep something. The belief that by giving it out, you have excluded it from within, that's a complete distortion of the power of extension. And that is why those who project from their ego are vigilant for their own safety. Those who project from their ego are vigilant for their own safety. Those who project from their ego, those who are projecting out their conflict, these folks are vigilant for their own safety. And these folks who project out their conflict, they are afraid. They are afraid. Why are they vigilant for their own safety? Why is it those who try to get rid of their conflict and see it in other people are vigilant for their own safety, because they are afraid that their projections will return to hurt them. They do believe they have blotted their projections from their own minds, but they also believe their projections are trying to creep back into their minds. And that is because the projections never really left their minds. And this in turn forces us to engage in compulsive activity. This in turn forces us to engage in compulsive activity in order to recognize that we did not get rid of our conflict. We did not get rid of our fear and our guilt. And so when I project out my conflict, my fear, and my guilt, I become vigilant for my own safety, because I believe that my own projections are trying to creep back into my mind. And because those projections really haven't left my mind, I am forced to engage in compulsive activity in order not to recognize that I didn't get rid of my guilt, I didn't get rid of my conflict by seeing it in others. You cannot perpetuate an illusion about another without perpetuating it about yourself. There's no way out of this, because it's impossible to fragment the mind. You can't get rid of something in your mind and give it to someone else and be free from it. You can't. It's impossible to fragment the mind. To fragment is to break into pieces, and mind cannot attack or be attacked. Mind cannot be fragmented. To fragment is to break into pieces, and mind cannot attack or be attacked. It cannot be fragmented. It's impossible to fragment the mind. The belief that you can fragment your mind and see part of your mind outside of you, that belief that you can fragment your mind, a fallacy which your ego always makes, underlies the ego's whole use of projection, that it can fragment the mind and see something, get rid of something it doesn't like in itself and see it in others and be rid of it. That underlies the whole use of projection, the ego's whole use of projection. The ego doesn't understand what mind is, and therefore doesn't understand what you are. Yet the ego's existence is dependent on your mind, because the ego is your belief. The ego is therefore a confusion in identification, which never had a consistent model and never developed consistently. What is the ego? The ego is a confusion in identification, because the ego never had a consistent model. And the ego never developed consistently. And that's why the ego is a confusion in identification. The ego is the distorted product of the misapplication of the laws of God by distorted minds who are misusing their power. Do not be afraid of the ego, because the ego does depend on your mind, which means you made it, and you made it only by believing in it. And so you can dispel your ego by withdrawing belief from your ego. You can dispel your ego by withdrawing belief from your ego. So don't project the responsibility for your belief don't project the responsibility for your belief in your ego onto anyone else, or you will preserve that belief. You'll preserve your ego. You'll preserve your conflict. If you project the responsibility for your belief in your ego onto others, onto anyone else, you will preserve your ego, which is a belief about yourself that you made up. When you are willing to accept sole responsibility for your ego's existence in yourself, when you are willing to accept sole responsibility for your ego's existence yourself, you will have laid aside all anger and all attack, because all anger and all attack come from an attempt to project responsibility for your own errors. But having accepted the errors as yours, once you've accepted, these are my errors, don't keep them. Once you've accepted responsibility for your own ego, for your own errors, do not keep those errors. Do not keep the ego. Once you've accepted full responsibility for your own ego, don't keep it. Don't keep it. Give it over quickly. Give them over quickly. Give them over quickly. Give them over quickly. Give them over quickly to the Holy Spirit. To be undone completely. To be undone completely, what does that mean? So that their effects will vanish from your minds and from the family of God as a whole. When you are willing to accept sole responsibility for your ego's existence, yourself, you will have laid aside all anger and all attack, because anger and attack come from projection of responsibility for your ego. And when you are willing to accept sole responsibility for your ego's existence yourself, you will have laid aside all anger and all attack, because all anger and attack come from an attempt to project responsibility for your own errors, for your own ego. But having accepted responsibility, sole responsibility for your errors and your ego, don't keep them. Don't keep them, 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 don't keep them. Give them over quickly to the Holy Spirit, to be undone completely, which means all their effects vanish from your mind and from the family of God as one. The Holy Spirit will teach you to perceive beyond belief. So the Holy Spirit's going to teach you how to perceive beyond what you believe. And the Holy Spirit's perception is true. Your ego can be completely forgotten at any time. Anytime. 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 Because the ego is always a belief that is totally incredible. Incredible. Unbelievable. No one can keep a belief he is judged to be unbelievable. And so the more you learn about the ego, the more you realize that the ego cannot be believed. The incredible cannot be understood because it is unbelievable. The utter meaninglessness of all perception that comes from the unbelievable must be apparent, but it's not recognized as beyond belief because it was made by belief. The whole purpose of this course, A Course in Miracles, the whole purpose of this course is to teach you that your ego is unbelievable. You can't believe it. It's unbelievable. It can't be believed. And that's the whole purpose of the course, is to teach you that your ego is unbelievable. It cannot be believed. And you who made your ego by believing the unbelievable, you can't make this judgment alone. That's right. And so by accepting the plan for your acceptance of that truth, that the Course calls the atonement, and by accepting this plan, which the Course calls atonement, the atonement is the plan by which that Spirit gave you, by which to hand over all your mistakes for correction. That's the atonement. It's the plan for the correction of all your errors. It's the plan for the correction of your ego. It's the plan by which you are able to stop believing the unbelievable, and by withdrawing your belief from your ego, which is only a belief. Now, by accepting this plan for the correction of your ego for yourself, by accepting this plan for the correction of your ego for yourself, you are deciding against the belief that you can be alone. You are deciding against the belief that you can be alone, thus dispelling the idea of separation and affirming your true identification with the whole universe of love as literally part of you. This identification with the universe of love, the kingdom, with you, is beyond doubt because it's beyond belief. See, your wholeness has no limits. Your wholeness has no limits because your wholeness is in infinity. Chapter 7, Section 10, the extension of the kingdom, or the extension of the universe, God's world. Only you can limit your creative power. But God wills to release your creative power. God no more wills you to deprive yourself of your creations than He wills to deprive Himself of His creations. Don't withhold your gifts from the family of God, or you're withholding yourself from God. Do not withhold your gifts to the family of God. Do not withhold your gifts to the family of God. Do not withhold your gifts from others. Do not withhold your gifts. Do not withhold your gifts. Do not withhold your gifts. Do not withhold your gifts to others, or you will withhold yourself from God. If you withhold your gifts to others, you withhold yourself from God. If you withhold your gifts to others, if you withhold your gifts to the world, you withhold yourself from God. If you withhold your gifts to the world, you withhold yourself from God. If you withhold your gifts from the world, from others, from everyone you meet, if you withhold your gifts, you will withhold yourself from God. Selfishness is definitely of the ego, but self-fullness is of the soul, because that is how God created the soul. Full. Full of itself. Full. The Holy Spirit is the part of mind that lies between your ego and your soul, mediating. The Holy Spirit is the part of the mind that lies between the ego and the soul, and the Holy Spirit that lies between the ego and the soul mediates between them, always in favor of the soul. The ego is always mediating between what? Between my ego and my soul. And my ego and the Holy Spirit is always mediating between them, and will always be in favor of the soul. It'll always mediate in favor of the soul. To the ego, this is partiality, and the ego therefore responds as if the part that is being sided against. The Holy Spirit always mediates between the ego and the soul, always choosing in favor of the soul. The ego sees this as partiality, and the ego responds as if it were the part that is being sided against. To the soul, this is truth, because the soul's fullness cannot conceive of any part from which it is included. The soul cannot conceive of any part from which it is included. The soul cannot conceive of any part from which it is excluded. The soul cannot conceive of any part from which it is excluded. The soul cannot conceive of any part from which it is excluded. The soul knows that the consciousness of all its brothers is included in its own, as it is included, as the soul is included in God. The power of the whole family of God and its Creator is therefore the soul, your soul's own fullness, rendering your creations equally whole and equal in perfection. The power of the whole family of God and the Creator of the family of God is therefore the soul's own fullness, rendering the soul's creations equally whole and equal in perfection to their own creation. Your ego cannot prevail against a totality which includes God. Your ego can't prevail over a totality that includes God, and any totality must include God. And so everything that God created is given all the power, all God's power, because it's part of God. Everything created is part of God, and so everything created is given all God's power because it's part of Him and sharing His being with us. Fading is the opposite of loss, and blessing is the opposite of sacrifice. Being must be extended. That's how being retains the knowledge of itself. The soul yearns to share its being, just like the soul's Creator did. Created by sharing, the soul's will is to create. The soul doesn't wish to contain God, but to extend God's being. The extension of God's being is the soul's only function. And the soul's fullness cannot be contained any more than the fullness of its Creator can be contained. Fullness is extension. The ego's whole thought system blocks extension. The ego's whole thought system blocks extension, and thus, when the ego blocks your whole function, when your ego blocks your function of extension, your ego blocks your only function. And blocking your only function, then the ego in that way blocks your joy. And then you will see yourself, and that's why you see yourself as unfulfilled. The truth is that unless you create, you are unfulfilled until you extend the gifts you both have and are. Until you extend the gifts you both have and are. Then you will see yourself as unfulfilled. See, unless you create, you are unfulfilled. But God doesn't know of unfulfillment, and therefore you must create. You must extend your being. You may not know your own extensions that came from your soul. You may not know them, but this can no more interfere with their reality than your unawareness of the soul can interfere with its being. The universe is forever extending because the universe is in the mind of God. You don't know your own self-fullness. That's because if you exclude any part of the universe from yourself, you're not whole. Exclude any part of the world from yourself. Exclude anyone in creation from yourself. Exclude anyone in creation from yourself, and you are not whole. See, a split mind cannot perceive its fullness, and a split mind needs the miracle of its wholeness to dawn upon it and heal it. A split mind cannot perceive its fullness, and so a split mind needs the miracle of its wholeness to dawn upon it and heal it. I ask for the miracle of my wholeness to dawn upon my mind and heal my split mind. I ask for the miracle of my soul's wholeness to dawn upon my mind and heal my mind. And this reawakens the wholeness in your mind and restores your mind to the universe of love, because it's acceptance of wholeness. This reawakens the wholeness in the mind, and this restores your mind to the universe of love, because of the mind's acceptance of wholeness, because of the mind's acceptance of wholeness, because of the mind's acceptance of wholeness. The mind reawakens the mind to the wholeness of creation. The full appreciation of the mind's self-fullness and the full appreciation of the soul's fullness makes selfishness impossible and extension inevitable. That's why there is perfect peace in the kingdom. Every soul is fulfilling its function in the kingdom, and only fulfillment is peace. Only the fulfilling of. Fulfillment means the filling of something. I am filled. I am full. I have been filled full. Fulfillment. I have been Insanity appears to add reality, but no one would claim that what is added is true. Insanity is therefore the non-extension of truth. Insanity is the non-extension of truth, because when you're not extending truth, you block your joy. And when you block your joy, you are blocking your self-fulfillment. The unfulfilled must be depressed because their self-fullness is unknown to them. Your creations are protected for you because the Holy Spirit who is in your mind knows of your creations, which is your loving extensions, and can bring your loving extensions back into your awareness wherever you will let Him be, the Holy Spirit, wherever you will let Him do that. Your creations, the extensions of your truth, the extensions of your soul, the extensions of your full soul, they're protected for you. They are the things that you have extended from your soul are protected for you. Because the Holy Spirit who is in your mind knows of them and can bring these creations of yours into your awareness whenever you'll let Him. Will you let Him now? Bring the gifts that you have extended to the kingdom, which is the universe of love. I ask you to bring those into my awareness. And my creations, the extensions of my love and their effects, they are there in my mind as part of my own being, because my full fulfillment includes them, filled, full. When I exclude anyone or myself, I will never know my fullness. The creations of every child of God are yours, since every creation belongs to everyone, being created for everyone as a whole. You have not failed to add to the inheritance of all the children of God, and you have not failed to secure the inheritance of God for yourself. It was the will of God to give you your inheritance, and God gave you your inheritance forever. And if it was God's will that you have your inheritance from Him forever, then guess what? He gave you the means for keeping your inheritance. And you have kept your inheritance. Disobeying God's will, that's meaningful only to the sane. In truth, it's impossible to disobey God's will because there is no other will. Your self-fullness is as boundless as God's, and like God's fullness, your fullness extends forever and in perfect peace. And the extension of your fullness, your soul, is so intense. The radiance of who you are, the radiance of your soul's fulfillment, the radiance of your soul, which only seeks to extend itself and to know itself fully. Your soul's radiance is so intense that your soul creates in perfect joy. That's what your soul does, and only the whole can be born of that kind of moment. Only the whole can be born of your soul's wholeness. Be confident that you have never lost your identity. Be confident that you have never lost your identity. And the extensions which maintain your identity in wholeness and peace, you haven't lost, never have lost. Be confident that you have never lost your identity. You haven't lost your identity. And nor have you lost the extensions which keep your identity in what? In wholeness, which means peace. Your creations, your extensions of your identity, extensions of your soul, well, be confident that you've never lost your identity, and the extensions which maintain your identity in wholeness and peace, the extensions which maintain my identity, my loving extensions, the extensions from my soul, I cannot lose. And I can lose the extensions which maintain my soul in its fullness in wholeness and peace. Miracles are an expression of this confidence that you haven't lost your identity or the extensions of your identity. A miracle is an expression of this confidence that you haven't lost your identity or all the effects of your identity, all the gifts. Be confident that you've never lost your identity and you haven't lost the ability to give the gifts that spring forth from your acceptance of your identity. Miracles are an expression of this confidence, and miracles are reflections both of your own proper identification with your brothers and of your own awareness that your identification is maintained by extension. The miracle is a lesson in total perception. And so by including any part of totality in the lesson, you have included the whole. You have said that when you write of the family of God, when you write of the kingdom, which is the universe, God's universe, the universe where the laws of God work without fear, without obstruction. You have said that when you write of the universe of love, the kingdom, and your creations which belong in the kingdom, you are describing what you do not know. You have said that when you write of the kingdom and your creations which belong in the kingdom, you are describing what you do not know. And that is true in a sense. That is true in a sense. Yes, that is true. When you write of the kingdom and your creations, and when you write about your extensions, your own gifts, your own extensions to the world, your own gifts to the world, when you are describing them, you are describing what you don't know. And that's true in a sense, but no more true than your failure to acknowledge the whole result of the ego's premises. The kingdom is the result of premises. The kingdom is the result of premises, just as this world is. You have carried your ego's reasoning to its logical conclusion, which is total confusion about everything. When you carry the ego's reasoning to its logical conclusion, you listened and 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 you listened for years and years and years and years and lifetimes. You have carried the ego's reasoning to its logical conclusion, which is total confusion about everything. Yet you don't believe this, or you could not possibly maintain that, or you could not possibly maintain it. You don't believe it. You don't believe the ego is insane. You don't believe that the ego is totally confused about everything. You don't believe that. Or you couldn't possibly maintain it. If you really saw this result of total confusion, this result of total confusion from following the ego, from listening to the ego's logic, if you really saw that its result was just total confusion about everything, if you saw what was the result of the ego, you could not want the ego. And the only reason why you could possibly want any part of your ego is because you don't see your ego. You do not see it. You don't see the whole of it either. You don't see. The only reason that you could possibly want any part of your ego is because you do not see the whole of the ego. You're willing to look at some of the ego's premises, but not at your ego's logical confusion. You are willing to look at the ego's premises, but not at the ego's logical conclusion. You've been willing to look at the ego's premises. I'm guilty, we're separate, you're to blame. But we haven't been willing to look at their logical outcome. How do you feel? How do you feel? What happened as a result? Is it not possible that you have, is it not possible you've done the same thing with the premises of God? Your creations are the logical outcome of God's premises. God's thinking has established your creations for you. They are therefore there exactly where they belong in your mind, because His thinking established your creations, your gifts. His thinking has established your gifts for you, and so your gifts to humanity are therefore there in your mind, exactly where they belong. Your gifts to humanity are there in your mind, for that is where they belong. That is exactly where they belong. And so your creations, your gifts that you give to humanity, they are therefore in your mind where they belong. You belong. Your creations belong in your mind. Your creations belong in your mind as your identification with God's, but your state of mind and your recognition of what is in your mind depends at any given moment on what you believe about your mind. Your creations, your extensions are from your soul, your soul's extensions. Your soul's extensions, they are the logical outcome of love's premises. God has established these gifts, and they are therefore exactly where they belong. And where your gifts that you've been given are where they are is that they are in your mind as part of your identification with God's. Your creations, your loving extensions, your gifts to the world, your gifts to the world, your gifts to the world, they belong in your mind as part of your identification with God's. But your state of mind and your recognition of what is in your mind, your state of mind, and your recognition of what is in your mind depends on any given moment on what you believe about your mind. Whatever these beliefs about you are, or whatever they may be, they are the premises which determine what you accept into your mind. Whatever it is you believe about your mind from moment to moment to moment, whatever these beliefs may be, they are the premises which will determine what you accept into your mind. It is surely clear that you can both accept into your mind what is not really there and deny what is. It's surely clear that you can both accept into your mind what is not really there and deny what is there. Listen to yourself. Listen to yourself. Listen to yourself. Only change can happen. When you change yourself. When you change yourself. I won't run. I won't run. I won't hide. I won't project. I only want to live my life. Free. The recognition of conviction, the courage of conviction in everything you do, everything you do. 'Cause every little action only falls onto you, and I don't want excuses to hear your bitterness. There's far too many people who want to give their best. Your state of mind and your recognition of what is in your mind depends at any given moment on what you believe about your mind. Now, whatever your beliefs may be about your mind, whatever they may be, they are premises which will determine what you accept into your mind. What I believe about my mind determines what I accept into my mind. And it is surely clear that you can both accept into your mind what is not really there and deny what is there. It's surely clear. Surely. Very clear.
So
Whatever these beliefs about your mind may be, these beliefs are premises which will determine what you accept into your mind. And it is surely clear that you can accept both into your mind what is not really there, and you can also deny what is there. And that's pretty clear, that's pretty obvious. It's surely clear that you can accept into your mind what's not really there, and that you can deny what is there. Neither of these possibilities requires further elaboration here, but both are clearly indefensible, even if you elect to dispel them. Even if you elect to defend them, they're still indefensible. Anything of your ego still is clearly indefensible. Anything of your ego is clearly indefensible, even if you elect to defend them. Yet the function which God Himself gave your minds through His mind, you may deny. You may deny the function God Himself gave your minds, but you can't prevent your function. Your function that God gave you is the logical outcome of what you are. Now, the ability to perceive a logical outcome, the ability to perceive a logical outcome, the ability to perceive a logical outcome, the ability to perceive a logical outcome depends on the willingness to see it. But its truth has nothing to do with your willingness at all. Truth is God's will. You share God's will, and you share what God knows. And that means if you deny God's will as yours, you're denying God's universe of love and your free universe. The Holy Spirit will direct you only so as to avoid pain. The undoing of pain must obviously avoid pain. The Holy Spirit will direct you only so as to avoid pain. The undoing of pain must obviously avoid pain if it's going to undo pain. And no one would object to undoing pain if they recognized this goal of undoing pain, or what actually did undo their pain. The undoing of pain must obviously avoid pain. Surely no one would object to avoiding pain if they recognized pain. But the problem is not whether what the Holy Spirit says is true, but whether you want to listen to what it says.